keep going. So now we're recording. Okay. So my name is Jane Halloran Ryan, and I am a professional genealogist based here in County Clare. And I am delighted this morning on behalf of the Clare Libraries and their History Week to have two members of Genealogy South Australia with us, Paula Ritchie and Judy Smith. And we're going to look at some of the resources that South Genealogy South Australia has, as well as the resources that can be used from the Clare Library website for genealogy research. And the nice thing about this morning is that we can use, for those in Clare doing genealogy research, South Australia genealogy research, there's some great resources there that Judy and Paula and their organization have. And then for us, we can assist the South Australians with some of their Clare genealogy research through the Clare Library. So thank you very much, Paula and Judy, for coming on Zoom to meet this morning. And it's great to have you here. So can you just give me a very quick synopsis of the Genealogy South Australia and what you
Um,
have?
Genealogy SA is, I'll start, Judy, and then you can interrupt. Um, Genealogy SA is now 50 years old as an organisation. The aim is to gather information and research for family historians and people interested in heraldry as well. And they've collected an extraordinary range of records and resources. So go on, Judy, you go more.
Okay. Yes, we have been collecting them for over 50 years. A lot of those records are things that members themselves have transcribed, and we also have the collection of the state of South Australia's birth, deaths, and marriages records up until roughly about the Second World War, with marriages and births at the moment up until 1928, I think. That might be slightly inaccurate, but and deaths past 1972. So they're things that you can look up online. We have our online database now is just growing so very quickly. That's really of use to members in South Australia or anywhere in the world for that matter, obviously. But yes, like-minded people looking at our DNA. We run writing groups. We run the Irish group, Paula and I, special interest groups, we call them. And yeah, we get together with our members and have a good time and explore all things Irish that we possibly can from Adelaide.
Okay, that's great. That's really good. And you were saying that you actually have over 5,000 members. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so it's a really large group of very active, I'd say, and enthusiastic researchers. So that's a great resource for us here in the Clare Library, certainly as well as for yourselves individually. And I note that you do have a database there, which you were saying can be accessed even if you're not a member from the website, and we will put that up on we will get that up on the screen or up in the resources there from this talk at the end of either at the end of the talk or somewhere on the Clare Library website, because it's actually it's very good. It's an online database, and it's something that could be very, very helpful for people, certainly in County Clare with South Australian connections, or anywhere in the world really, for South Australian connections. So you made two interesting points to me the other day when we were talking, and they're going to play a part in some of this, or one of them will anyway. Number one, you said that in South Australia there weren't convicts. There weren't convicts sent to South Australia as such. So there's very little really from the transportation database or a convict database that could be useful for researchers, and that's an interesting point to note. So that gives that might gear the family research in particular directions. And you also talked about the networks and certainly networks that existed, as we can see, pre-famine in one of the case studies. And I think that's something that's very, very important. It's something that I looked at in my own PhD research because Irish are very, very good with networking, and the networks are so important in terms of doing any type of family history research. And you sent me a great couple of pages of a database here that we're going to go through, 2 case studies. And it is interesting, I was just saying it earlier to you there, that there are networks there within the database of people that are connected to one another, even though they don't have the same last name. So I think that's something we should all be looking at, possible networks when we're doing our genealogy research. So I'm going to look at 2 quick case studies that we talked about there, from your membership database and from what had been sent to me. And one is in relation to George and Catherine Warren, Warren, and that's not a very common Clare surname. So that was one of the reasons why I picked it, because you're not going to have lots and lots of entries of the same name the way you would with McMahon or McNamara, or, some of the other very common Clare names. So we have a George and Catherine Warren. They're both born about the same year in 1808, and they both emigrate to Australia. And the information that was on the database is that they were from Drumcliff Parish. George was listed as from Shanvaux, and Catherine was listed from Cloonfee. So I did a little bit of work on them there, and what came up on the database, and I'm just going to show you very quickly here. So the fact that we knew that we had a parish, Drumcliff, and we also had 2 townlands. And I'm going to look at George first, and am I sharing my screen? I'm not sharing my screen, am I?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, let me share my screen. Sorry about that. I go back to myself here, and I will go into screen sharing. I don't see screen sharing here. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, 1 participant. So let's see. Do you guys, can you tell me where I might find that? So I can't find it on this thing. Screen sharing.
It's normally right at the bottom in the middle, a
Yeah, it's
green
normally at the
button.
bottom in the middle. Yeah.
Yep.
Let me just see if
That
I can. Yeah, okay. Let me just
share
go.
arrow.
Yeah, I might come up this way. I find every time Zoom updates something, they change something. So this
Yep.
is here. Can you guys see this now?
I can see you.
Oh boy, you can't see it. Okay. All right. Um, content only. Let me just share here.
Oh,
So
that's
You
looking
can
I,
see
good.
it
I think
now. Okay,
it's
great.
going to good.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it's
So,
it's just weird anyway. So here's the page there, and I'm gonna move us down a tiny bit there. So here's the page of the Clare Library Genealogy website. So which I know you're all familiar with there. You're both very familiar with. So a couple of nice things about it for research. One of the things I was saying is that if you know a townland or if you know a civil parish, if you go down along the right side of the board here, the screen here, you'll see there's a townland index and there's a civil parish index. So what I'm going to do, if we look at George Warren there very quickly, I'm going to go into the townland index, and you'll see in the townland index, it has them all alphabetized, and it gives you lots of information about the townland, well, generally, so that you can then go into further information. Now, I'm going to go, Shanvaux is S, it starts with S, so we're going to go down to the end there, and we're going to go all the way down to where Shanvaux should come up. There we go. Here is Shanvaux, and Shanvaux is in Drumcliff Civil Parish. Ennis Rural, DED. It's given a location of 26 on the map within the parish map, okay? Ennis number one, and sorry, I think I have that moved up there, but it is Ennis is the union. Okay, so if I go into Shanvo, I'm going to click on Shanvo here, and this page is going to come up, and it tells us part of Drumcliff Civil Parish, Ennis Rural DED, Ennis number one registration district, and Ennis Poor Law Union. Now, those things are helpful for civil records, births, marriages, and deaths. So those are nice things to note. But it also gives us other information. It gives you map information, but it also gives you occupiers and lessors recorded in Griffith's valuation. So I'm going to click that on because we want to see who is in Shanvo in Griffith's valuation in Clare in 1855. So we have a list, and those are done alphabetically. We have a list of names here of Shanvo occupiers. We have Timothy Cullinan. We have George Warrant, and I'll talk about that in a second. Daniel Finucane, Michael McMahon, James Sexton, and the Marquis of Cunningham. Probably the landowner at that stage, because that's, he has a title. But this is a transcription, but it's very useful because it's giving me some of the surnames. And the surname of George Warrant is extremely useful because we have the name as George Warren, okay, Warren, but this is giving a similar name, but probably a spelling variant. So anybody researching a Warren or a Warrant would want to note that there are spelling variations there, okay? Now, I do stress on these, on this, that this is a transcription, so you would need to go and look at the original page, which you can get from Ask About Ireland. But that is very interesting, George Warrant, okay? Now, I'm going to go back for a minute, and I'm going to go back again there just to Drumcliff, because I'm going to talk a little bit about Catherine and George. So Catherine Warren there, and this is, so if you go into the civil parish index, all the civil parishes are going to come up and they're going to be listed, and Drumcliff comes up. And it gives you a list of resources associated with Drumcliff Parish. So you have a map, you have books of survey, you have baptism records, marriage records, et cetera, and it goes on and on and on down. And these are updated. This page is updated as new collections are transcribed and donated to the library. So it's a living source. So it's something that's always worth checking. So I'm going to go into the Roman Catholic baptism records for Drumcliff because it covers the years 1841 to 1879. And we go in, what I'm going to do is I am going to go into the registers by the father's name, and you can download them. It downloads it for you. And I'm going to then click it on here, and we're going to come up, and this is another way of just extracting information, okay? So I'm going to go all the way down to Warrant because the father's name is Warrant, and we want to find out maybe a little bit more about the Warren or the Warrant family. Are they two separate families, or is the name kind of interchangeably used? And so I want to just see that. Now I'm just going to move our thing. Well, I might just go down as quickly as I can. So we'll look at that. Some of the registers, as you know, they do give townland information. Some of them do, some of them don't. But they give information because they're church records of baptismal sponsors, and it might give us more names to work with. In other words, we might look at Warrens might have connections, or baptismal sponsors might be other family members, even with different names. Now, I'm going to move this along a little bit here if I can. This is just going very slow for me. Let me just see if I can. Sorry, I'm not moving it as quickly as I'd like to be. I'll get down to a certain stage and then I can move it along. These have all been voluntarily done by a lady, or most of them by a lady by the name of Sheila Duddy. And she just developed a great Excel template for doing them. And she has transcribed them and then been able to extract the information so that you can look at baptismal registers by mother's maiden name, you can look at them by father's name, or you can look at them by chronological order. So it's really, really useful from that point of view, and they're really good to have. Now, I'm sorry, it's just taking too long here, and I don't want it to. I don't think go.
Jane, can you do a Control F
Yeah,
and
let
find
me.
one?
Oh yeah, thank you.
I suddenly thought
Oh, it's
we're
just
only at
sorry.
C.
If I enable
Yeah,
editing, I can do that. Yes, I can do that. Control F, yeah. And thank you.
it's all right.
Monday morning brain,
Yeah.
or Tuesday morning brain. So, okay, now we'll go down. Now, on next. Okay. Now it's showing the women first, but we want to get the men. Let me just see. We're getting down to the end anyway, so now I'm going to go all the way down here, and I just want to get to the men first. Here we go. There we go. So we have Warren here. We have a William Warren and a John Warren. William Warren would be the child's name. We have Kath Warren, okay? We don't have, I don't see George Warren, Andrew Warren, and Margaret McMahon. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't give us townlands, okay, or locations, but it does give us information. We have a Kath. I'm just going to look at the Kath here first, the first Kath, because you won't get the records there because she's born in 1808, as is George, but you will get other information in terms of there's James Warrant. These are later births, okay, or later baptisms, but they do give you other names that you can work with. Now, unfortunately, we don't have like I said, we don't have the Townland information, but we do have information, such as other names, and those names may mean something to you, or you may have come across them in your other research. Now, I do want to go back for a minute because I want to talk about I'm just going to get rid of this. I do want to talk about the marriage because there is a marriage record there that's noted in for a Kath Warren. She marries a Corny Leary. So I do want to talk about that. So we'll talk about that for a second here, and then we will move on to the next one. Okay. And I'll do my enabling editing. And now, here we go. Now it starts me down at the bottom, which is kind of nice anyway. So here's Kath Warren. Okay. There are other Warrens as well. There's a Bridget Warren, Martin O'D. There's a Margaret Warren, Michael O'Loughlin. So these are other names you might want to look at. But here's the Kath Warren who marries the Corny Leahy. And this researcher that gave this information had obviously found the record here, I'd say probably on this database. And while we don't have a Townland, we have other names to work with, such as John Warren and Mary Warren, Mary Slattery. And we also have a date to work with, the 9th of February, 1839. And what's nice about what Sheila has done is she also gives you the page location. So you can then go back into the National Library of Ireland, the Catholic Parish Registers, and you can look up and actually see the original entry, well, the digitized entry of the marriage record. So that gives other useful information in relation to that. I think it is interesting in the Griffiths valuation that a George Warren is residing in Shanvaux. And I would think that the researcher might want to look at what other Warren or Warrant families were in the in the area as you move towards the end of the 19th century. So I think that that's something that's worth considering, and that's what I have to say in relation to that. I also think that the Townlands Index can be used very helpfully. Sometimes what happens, and we'll talk about the second one there, sometimes you find that people have given a townland name instead of a civil parish. In other words, I'm from Shanvaux, not I'm from Drumcliff or I'm from Ennis. Or they might say I'm from Drumcliff or I'm from Ennis. And then you have to figure out where in Ennis and which parish, because there's a couple of civil parishes having to do with Ennis itself that they're from. So anyway, I just wanted to note that. And to note in relation to the marriage record, Kath Warren's marriage record to Corny Leary or Leahy, that the witnesses and other Warren names show up. So there was another. I'm going to talk now about the second name that we spoke about, and that was a Bridget Hegarty. And Bridget Hegarty gave information about her being born in 1855, which is actually good information because it means that we might have some parish registers, because the later registers you tend to have the information there. It's pre-Civil War, civil registration, but it's still possible. She's from Clare, and she gives her residence as Gortalaca. Her civil parish or her parish as Gortalaca. Now, Gortalaca, there is no parish Gortalaca in Clare. So what I did was I went back to the Townland Index again, okay? And if I look up Gortalaca, Gortalaca will tell me, it'll tell me where Gortalaca is located. And what was interesting about Bridget Hegarty is that Bridget Hegarty seemed to have other people there with her, and that's getting involved again in the idea of the networks. So I'm going to go down to Gortalaca. There's Gortalaca. Gortalaca is in Ina. It's the DED of Clunanaha. Now becomes interesting or handy when you're looking at the census records, okay? It's Milltown Mulbay is the electoral, I believe that's the electoral district, and excuse me, that's that's the registration district, and the union should probably be, let me see if I can move that over. I'll see if I can move that over. All right. I'll go down here. The union is Ennis-Diamond, okay? Ina is Ennis-Diamond. So let's just go into Gortalaca here. We'll click it on. We know that it's part of Ina. So we have a parish now for Bridget Hegarty. So Bridget Hegarty gave information where she was living as her townland as opposed to her parish. But because that townland, we could find it in the Townland Index, we now know her parish is actually Ina. And we can look at the records that deal with Ina. Now, I think what I did here is I went straight into which I will do, I'm going to go into the civil parish index, and we'll look at Ina, okay? And Ina gives us lots of resources. And here we go again with the same. We have marriage records, we have baptism records. Now, the baptism records for Ina start in 1850, and it tells us, or Bridget has told us, that she is born in 1855. Now, I have already downloaded that, so Bridget should be covered in that Townland Index. And lo and behold, we'll find Bridget now, and oh, is that coming? Whoops, my eating, okay. No, we are finishing up, so I'm not worried about that. Sorry, I don't see where that's, oh yeah, sorry. I can't see that very well. Find next. Actually, it's giving me, I think what I'll do is I'll go down here. I'm gonna. For some reason, this thing gives me just it seems to be giving me just one of the lines, which isn't helpful, but we'll get, yeah. Is that the one I'm looking for? No, it's not. Right, that's the one I'm looking for. Now, okay, so we have a list of Hegartys here, okay? And in the parish register, okay? So we're looking for a Bridget, and we're looking for a Bridget, and this is the names, these are the father's names, because we're looking at the father's index, the one that she's extracted. We see a Bridget here, but this Bridget is Bally-O'Shea. And we know that our Bridget is Gortalaca. So we keep going down. There's a number of Bridgets. There's Bridget in Darha. There's Bridget in Mahara. But we keep going down. It's kind of a nice way. Another Bridget in Mahara, where we are getting down to it. Now, here we come to Bridget in Gortalaca. Okay? Bridget's father is Pat Hegarty. Bridget's mother is Kate Kelly. I'm going to go across here so you can look at the rest of it. Bridget's sponsors are Michael Kelly and Honora Marinan. So those are two names that would be very interesting. Michael Kelly is probably connected to Bridget's mother, Kate Kelly. And the date of baptism is the 28th of October, 1855. So that's very helpful information. We can also, with these, we can also see here, I'll go back to it here. So here's Pat Hegarty. Now, Pat Hegarty and Kate Kelly have other children besides Bridget. They have Pat, they have Mary, they have Martin, they have Catherine. So these are other names that we can look at, and that we might have, this researcher may be able to use those names to look at further. Did they go out to South Australia? Did they remain in Ireland? And that information can be used. You can go back, you can use Gortalaca and look at who's living in Gortalaca in 1901 in the 1901 census. Do you ladies want me to do that or what? What do you think?
Yes, if you've
Yeah,
got time, I think that would be
sure.
useful.
I'll do it. Yeah, no, that's fine. I'll do it. I'll just get rid of the things here. Sorry.
While you're doing that, Jane, I thought
Yes.
that was a lovely example of the mother's name, her
Mm,
Christian name, being spelt in three different ways,
yes.
four actually. Kate with a K, Kate with a C, Kitty,
Yes,
obviously that's Catherine, and then actually Catherine spelled out. So it's a
that's
good
right.
reminder.
Yeah, it's all, yeah, and the variants are really important to note because you just never know what you can find. So I'm just going to look here for now. I remembered from the going through the Gortalasa there that the DED, and this is where that's a helpful piece of information, is Clunanaha for the 1901 census. So I'm just going to click that on, and we're going to look, and there's Gortalaca and we'll see a list of the residents. And again, this is all transcribed, but you can look at the originals through the National Library website. And there are still lots of Kellys in Gortalaca. There's a ton of
Mm.
Kellys, and there's Hegartys. So that could be very useful information. Hegarty, the Hegarty family name remains in Gortalaca, okay, as does the Kelly family. And that's very useful information. So you have other names, and I don't mean to be going through this too quickly, but just to give you an idea, I just want you to see all the names that are there. Do we have other Hegartys that are listed? You could have several families of Hegartys. Yeah, I'd say you definitely have several families of Kellys. But you can look at these names and use the first names to see, was there a particular first name that carried forward? Often that's the case to denote certain branches of a family. Corny could have been a particular, Cornelius could have been a particular name, or Edward could have been a particular name, or Hugh, or Edmund, certain names that differentiate one branch of a family from another branch of a family. The other thing that was interesting on the database that we were that we mentioned earlier, and we won't have the time to go into it, is that Bridget Hegarty seemed to have a connection, possible connection with Martin O'D and with John McMahon. I think we thought that, or there was some, certainly with Martin O'D. So, and that's going back to the connectivity and the networking that families would have done. So even though I don't see an OD family here, but when I did go and do a little bit more work that I'm unfortunately not going to be able to go into here because we don't have the time, Martin O'D shows up in the, I believe he shows up in the Dysart parish registers. Now, Dysart is located right by Ina. And it would appear to me that the families, they lived very closely, close to one another, even though they might have been in different parishes. The areas were very close, and there may have, there was probably a connection. I think she did give some evidence of a connection there. So that's worth looking at. And of course, the name, a new name of Dysart might be another place or another location that she could be looking at, or he or she could be looking at for further information. So the site, the library website, I'm just going to go back to the main, not the main page there, but I will go back to the main page. There's just a huge amount of information. It was revamped there recently. Michael Talty, Dolores Meany, and a number of the staff there in the library, because it's such an important resource, and this resource is used all over the world. But there's lots of new information in it. Other than just the births, marriages, and deaths of the civil or the parish registers, and then we have Griffith's valuation, and you have the the Plotman books. But we've also, Clare Root Society has done a huge number of volunteering and put things up. The list of freeholders has been put up. Well, that's not up yet, sorry, but it is in the library, and you can get a look up for that. We did a project there where we did biographical notices from the Clare champion between 1903 to 1985. There have been papers that have been found or that have been donated that have been digitized, and some of them will probably come onto the library website. You can see here there's births, baptisms, census records, court reports, emigration records. So there's lots of information there for people to look at. I think the most important thing, and maybe the purpose of this Zoom meeting, was to look at some of the resources and see how we can extract other information we can then go back into the site with that new information and use that again. We could go back in and look at Dysart. We could go back in and look at ODs. We can go back in and look at other Warren families, or Shanvaux, the Shanvaux area. We could follow along even if we wanted to. What were there any Warrens that remained in Kilnam or Ina Parish, and did they continue to have children or have families? Because I think the Warren name is actually not listed in the 1901 census in Shanvaux. So they appear to have left Shanvaux, but that doesn't mean that they haven't gone elsewhere. They could have moved elsewhere, but there's lots of information and lots of things that can be done. Do you ladies want to add anything in relation to South Australia just before we go?